3 months, 15 days, I don't know how many hours, how many minutes it has been since the Iceman and the Coach have been on your television screens. Welcome to Iceman and Coach, everybody. We're going to be a little bit rusty, but fucking A, it is good to be back. Good to see you, Brad. It's been a minute since we've done a little INC action.
Iceman, it has been, many, many minutes, as you alluded to. This is home, though, man. I'm glad we're back to this kind of a wide open forum to talk about anything we want to, and there's plenty to talk about, but there's a lot in, kind of the recent sports, news cycle that's really exciting and interesting, and I think that's the kind of stuff we're going to talk about today, and who knows where the show's going to take us, though, as things go on.
It has been an eventful year, to say the least, and since the last time we talked, a lot has happened, but I think on the personal front, you and I have gotten Braves talk off the ground. So if there's anybody listening or watching that is a Bradley fan, we definitely appreciate you there. The Braves had a great season. We had a great season. And it's funny, kind of like this show, we have been more sporadic with the shows, but it felt like we really gained some traction. And the people that showed up, they really showed out. And that's what I love about doing content in general. No matter how long it's been, you get some people who are going to show up for you. And I really enjoyed the work that we did, even though we didn't get to come back to this home. But you said it best. This is home, but Braves Talk is a hell of a lot of fun.
Oh, it definitely is. And I think it's just because there's just a lot of passion there. And we've got a nice little tight following of Bradley fans that are into it. We've got the chat on X and everything else. And so there's just a lot more passion wrapped up in Braves Talk than what we talk about here. This is all stuff that's just like general interesting sports banter, which is fun for us to do, right? I mean, because our wives aren't going to listen to us talk about Shadeur Sanders or the NFL draft or NIL.
Actually, that's not true. So I did get asked by my wife over the weekend why everybody was talking about it, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So, Brad, what have you been up to, like in just life in general? Because I know your daughter is doing softball again. I'm coaching T-ball again. We're in the throes of spring all of a sudden. This seems to be a running gag with us now.
It is. Well, and this week it really kicks off here personally because about a month ago my daughter started all winter she was practicing like travel softball. About a month ago games started, so we're well into that. She's also playing rec ball, and so that will start. Practices for that start this week, and she'll practice on Tuesday and Thursday this week, probably a couple days a week for the next few weeks till games start, and then maybe practices will dial back. She will also have a travel practice at some point in time this week, and then a doubleheader on Saturday. Our son started soccer, so he's had soccer practice every Tuesday and a soccer game every Saturday morning for the last, I think, 3 weeks, and so he'll have that this week. But also for him this week, T-ball starts on Wednesday. I'm coaching his T-ball team. So the funny part about that is the form we filled out to sign him up for T-ball was an electronic form that my wife filled out. And I get a text saying, like, thanks for offering to coach. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm like, I didn't react that way, but I asked my wife, I'm like, did you sign me up to coach? She's like, no, I didn't check any boxes or whatever. Well, she definitely did at some point in time. And so I'm coaching his T-ball team. So that practice will be Wednesday. And so, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we are jam-packed here in the sports world. Saturday, we'll have soccer in the morning, softball, doubleheader shortly after. And, we're off and running, man. And I honestly, though, as much as I've learned this about myself, truthfully, in the last maybe year or less than that, I really prefer to be busy. I find I don't do well with, like, idle time or downtime. I feel like I thrive like in the chaos. I work better that way. Like I kind of thrive in chaos, I guess, in a strange way. So I'm kind of looking forward to things being a little busy. We got a really nice vacation planned at the end of July, so this is going to get us there quickly, which will be fun. and so no, man, tons going on, but it's all good stuff, which is great. It's all positive and it's all exciting. And I know you got the T-ball thing going, and I'm sure just, this time of year brings all sorts of new activities, home projects, you name it.
Well, as you know, I was in Rome, not last week, but the week prior, and I think I totally forgot to tell you that that's where I was going to be. And so I was actually making sure to text you every single day about like, and not in a douchey way about like,
No,
oh,
that's
look what I'm
fascinating.
doing. But it
Yeah.
was like I was 6 hours ahead. And so when I would text you, it'd be like 6 a.m. or something. It's like noon. And I'm like, yep, here I am right here. And that was actually good for me to get away. And it was when I came back, I felt like, all right, the year has kind of started over again because there was a tumultuous start to the year. It went by really fast. Coaching T-ball, like everything was happening. And this trip was just an albatross around my neck. You know what I mean? And we went there and it was good and we're back. But I made an observation about T ball that happened beforehand, but it really has to do with coaching. And it kind of, I think it translates to every single level. But my wife made this observation. I had made it before. But when you coach T ball, I don't know what the league is like that you're going to be coaching in, but they send you like a clinic and they send you to a clinic with all the other coaches. So it's like T-ball, coach pitch, all the way up through. And these clinics teach you how to coach, or that's what I think their endeavor is to teach you how to coach. And one thing I've noticed, and I think that this is true, is that coaching is not something you really learn. It's very similar to leadership. Like X's and O's, people can learn X's and O's of that. But what comes down to coaching is motivation, personalities, understanding the people that you have, and like I've noticed that when I look at other coaches, the more complex they make practice, the more complex they try to get the kids to do things during the game, it's a disaster. And then there's me, who is one person. All these other teams have five coaches trying to keep these kids in line. And I figured it out. I figured out how to motivate the kids. I figured out how to get through to them to the point where they do what they need to do, they learn. And it's just something that I was like, these coaching clinics, I think, have a good I think they're intended to be good, but I think that they miss the mark when it comes sometimes to coaching younger children because sometimes you just got to keep it simple.
Yeah, so they don't have anything like that for like the local rec softball, baseball, t-ball league. But we're talking a much smaller population than what you're working with. Uh, Now, when I coached, the youth football in Central Illinois has something like that. They used to
Sure.
do like coaches clinics. You had to go to be certified to coach. And I think that the purpose they served was to try to just provide, if you're just a dad that had no idea, maybe you never played, even if you did play, like here's a baseline knowledge, here's some drills, here's some
100%.
simple scheme, like just giving you something to work with. They usually had local high school coaches there to teach different aspects of it. And normally you would have, a coaching staff of 3 or 4 people, and you could split up, hey, you go watch this talk about this thing, and I'll go here and you go there. But that ultimately I think was a good thing, but it's like it's probably like 20% of what's really necessary to like
Yeah.
really coach someone up to coach. I think you're 100% right. I think you can learn it, but it takes it's the same as why you see, I think more so in like college basketball, as I'm talking about Bradley, you see teams hesitant to hire long-time successful assistants as head coaches because they're like being a head coach is way different. Like just the responsibility and
Mm-hmm.
everything that comes along with being a head coach is way different than being an assistant coach. And because being an assistant coach is like honestly the fucking best because you can just focus on like whatever this, the football, the basketball, the baseball, whatever the sport is, like you're just focused on like just the shit you want to coach for, like
Yes.
all the fun stuff. As a head coach, like half of your time is taken up by all the administrative crap, and then if there are any issues, whether it's parent issues or administration, or when you get to the high school and college level fundraising, I mean, there's so many other things you have to dabble in at those levels. That I heard, we talk about that search season in the Bradley chat all the time, and he's like he refers to these big time college assistants. If you're like, well, why'd you hire this assistant? He's like, well, he goes, that guy hasn't even been like a high school head coach. He's like, I'd take a guy that's been a high school head coach over a guy that's just been nothing but an assistant because at least he knows what it's like to be the man in charge and all the other things that come along with it. And it's funny because I sit there, after coaching for so long, I've like my desire has been to just want to be a parent and watch, and it's so hard because and this is gonna sound so arrogant, and I apologize, and it's not meant to be that way, but it comes back to what you're talking about, that not everyone is
cut out for it.
is cut out for it. And like the woman who is coaching Carver's soccer team, she sent like her text she sent out was like, "This isn't my first rodeo." But I'm like, great. Like this is a lady that's like she's gonna be organized. She knows what she's doing. What and now okay, these are 4, 5, and 6 year olds. So I'll preface by saying that.
Yep.
But it's it's chaos. And it's gonna be chaos with that age group, but there's zero structure. Like if I did like she doesn't know the rules. Like
Oh,
I
that's
mean, she has
different.
no idea. Like I mean, it's just like she has no idea if she has enough players on the field when they're playing. Like she's basically just a supervisor is all she's doing, which is great. I'm not gonna take that away from her, but like it's I'm like, man, this is why I throw my hat in the ring because like I I know I can be better than that.
Well,
Um,
you said it to me once where people or leagues like this need people like me coaching because I care about actually coaching the kids. Like I understand the assignment of 4 and 5 year olds, but I also want to provide something other than just general supervision. I mean, I'm a volunteer, I'm not getting paid, but I still take it very seriously. And
yeah,
that's the way I feel. And while I think a lot of parents, when they first meet me, I'm like very hands off. Like, you're not going to see me with structured drills and things like that, but I know what I want to do, right? I know how I want to motivate the kids because it's worked. It's just like any other coach, like, and this is kind of a good segue to the first thing that we were going to talk about, but we always mention this guy about Coach Prime, right? We've talked about him so many times, and he's been kind of tangentially in the news lately as it relates to his son, but he knows his strengths, right? And we've talked about it. His strengths are motivation. His strengths are getting kids to come here, NIL stuff. I would say he's probably not as strong of an X's and O's guy as some other coaches might be. Like Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, the amount of X's and O's knowledge you can pull out of their brain is probably insane, right? But he knows his job. He knows how he needs to do his job his way to get the job done. And that's a sign of somebody who knows how to coach. Like if you send out a message that says, hey, this ain't my first rodeo, and you don't know how many people need to be on the field, then this needs to be your last rodeo.
yeah, and like, and it's so tough because like I know as being I've volunteer coached youth football and things like that before I ever had kids. I was like 18 years old doing it, right? Like I get it, but I knew the rules. Like I knew how many players you need on the field. I knew what to do. I mean, I obsessed over knowing the rules, truthfully, and
It's your
uh
job.
right, but also at the same time, understanding that these are young kids and they all gotta play and they all have to have fun, like, that's the most important part. But, like, you can do that inside of, a structure that follows the rules, that teaches them something while they're having a good time, and, like, that's the trick, and
Yes.
I think that sometimes we get away from that, and it's all about just having someone that's gonna be out there giving them high fives for 45 minutes, which is basically what this person does, and and again, I'm not kudos
You
to
are
her
just
for
no. You're no,
volunteering.
no. Just say what's on your
Well,
mind. She
this
sucks.
this is how I know my feelings are validated,
Yes,
okay? Is my wife who, like, doesn't get worked up about these things is, like, super irritated by it,
I love it.
by the coach. So I'm like, "Okay, so it's not just me, like, it's legit. Um,
I'm
it's
here for
real."
it, man.
So, like but, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've just accepted that, like, I have to I I've I don't wanna say, like, I have the experience of coaching, I guess. I'm not saying I'm worth a crap at it, but I feel like I know how to do it to some degree, at least with kids, and so I just need to keep volunteering to do it and throw my hat in the ring and do it because I'm qualified um, and at least it saves me from sitting on the sideline, uh,
Getting irritated.
getting irritated by what's happening.
So look, let's start off an actual sports thing. I mean, we could talk about t-ball and parenting and all that, but I think the topic of the day right now is is being classified as the free fall of Shadeur Sanders. So if anybody hasn't been paying attention, the NFL draft was this past weekend. You and I really don't care a lick about it, except for maybe if there's a juicy story that comes out of it. And certainly this year, mighty juicy story. So I think it's fair to say that Shadeur was one of the highest, if not the highest rated quarterback coming out this year. He's very close in that range of people who are looking at these things. And the NFL has made the draft so long now that it's Thursday, I believe, is the first round, and then they go what 2 and 3 or 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. And Shadeur Sanders did not get picked on the first day, which was a headline in and of itself. And then he wasn't picked on the second day, which like upped the ante. That's I think when you texted me and said this Shadeur story is juicy. And now that he's drafted, I think fifth round, Cleveland Browns, they have like 19 quarterbacks now. The question becomes like, what happened? And I have a lot of thoughts on it, and I've heard certainly a lot of opinions on it, but I wanted to start with that. And I think it would be good if you start with your opinion since you're the one who brought it up offline, and we can kind of have a banter about it because some people are really hot about this.
I think that first of all, I don't know what's more of a story, Shadeur falling through the draft or like Mel Kiper's
You're
meltdown
losing it.
as it was happening. Like, I mean, it's just you talk about somebody that just like he could not fathom like how this was even possible. Yeah, I mean that was
Mel
something else.
Kiper,
But
who's been wrong about a lot, by the way, because that
yeah,
shows you that it's not, this is not an exact science. Drafting and
no.
trying to figure out where people are going to go is not an exact science. So even the best get it wrong like 70% of the time.
So I wondered this, okay, because Dion's been on record saying that there were certain franchises that he was not going to let Shadeur go to, and that essentially saying he would intervene and pull like an Eli Manning situation or something like that. So it's like, okay, based off that, you could probably take nearly half the franchises off the table
Yeah,
to begin with. Okay. So now you're left with the other 16 franchises. And let's say that half to two-thirds of them have a franchise quarterback. So you're looking at a very small number of teams that maybe even they would be willing to be drafted too. And and now those teams have to want to draft you. And the big story that's circulating in the media is the New York Giants situation where his interview apparently went horribly. He was given kind of like some homework to do as far as some game prep stuff. He wasn't prepared. When called on being unprepared, he reacted really poorly. And of course, this is all just, I guess, speculation. I mean, it hasn't come from like Brian Dable's lips to our ears, but um, you got to imagine there's some truth to it. And if that's the case, you can't blame them for not drafting him. I mean, they wanted a quarterback. I think they traded back in right to get Jackson Dart. The
they
Giants
did.
did, and so
Yep.
like they got their guy. I don't. Why would you want? I said this to my dad, and you and I have been huge Coach Prime and Colorado supporters. We think it's great for college football what they've been doing, what they did. It was
We've also
exciting, it was
been
fun.
critical though. I think
We've been
it's
critical,
worthy
yeah.
pointing out that we were definitely on the
Yes.
like they got to start winning.
Why would you invite the circus to town? I think there's a certain level of dysfunction that you could be inviting into your building, and I think you almost have to be a Cleveland Browns type organization that can't really go down any further than where they are
That's right.
to be willing to roll the dice on that. I mean, and you said it, man. They got, right now, currently, what they're going to have on their roster if these guys sign Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shadeur Sanders.
Yeah, they drafted Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah,
He wasn't already there, so like they already picked him, and then they were like, yeah, you know what? Sure, let's add a fifth guy.
yeah. So you have two guys who are, let's call it, you have Joe Flacco, who's at the end of his career, who was a franchise quarterback for years and years with the Ravens. You have Deshaun Watson, who's off the field stuff's well documented, but it's just been that type of guy that hasn't quite been able to get back on track since he left Houston and has dealt
Nope.
with the off the field issues. Kenny Pickett, who is probably destined to be a journeyman backup in the NFL from this point forward. And that leaves you with their two draft picks, Gabriel and Sanders. And it's like, what? I just, it's the weirdest thing ever. Like, I wish someone could come out and be totally candid about what their game plan is. I speculate maybe
That they don't know.
that, well, that's certainly a possibility, but I speculate that maybe the Browns drafted Shadeur, but you know what? We'll take him and hope that somebody else wants him and we can get something for him, here down the road um, on the trade market at some point in time. I mean, I have no idea. I can't, and Shadeur, it's almost like, I hate to say this because like a lot of people say he's a good kid and I'm sure he is, but like also what he portrays himself as on the field doesn't always come across that way. And but just like the Shadeur Sanders to the Cleveland Browns is just the perfect sort of like mismatched, I don't know, like situation that you would I don't it's just gonna be fun to watch how this plays out, I guess.
So before I get into some of my like detailed thoughts, I guess I'm going to ask you a direct question. Do you think he would have been drafted in the top half of the first round if his dad wasn't Deion Sanders?
No.
Because a lot of people are making this about his off the field stuff, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But I think what's getting missed is potentially the on the field stuff. Because here's the thing about the NFL. I mean, they don't always get it right. Like a lot of the guys who were drafted before him just flat out suck, right? I mean, Will Levis was given a job and he's done some of the stupidest things I've ever seen on a football field. So it's not as if these people get it wrong or get it right all the time. But there's tape on these people. He's played at Jackson State and he played at Colorado. His first year at Colorado, which we both said is a big step up from when you're going from Jackson State all the way up. And they looked good early, got their teeth knocked in. Didn't look good at all. They made some adjustments, but really, when you look at the totality of his career at Colorado, not a lot of winning in the most consequential games, right? Gaudy stats, but is it one of those where the stats don't tell the whole story? Is he really a good prospect or not? And I kind of wonder if he was teetering on that in terms of the coaching, right? The tape that they're looking at, and then you add in the interviews, then you add in the Deion Sanders stuff, and you add in the retiring in numbers, which was ridiculous. And
So
then
weird.
I agree. And then you add in getting his own booth, the whole legendary thing. Hasn't done a thing in the NFL. The NFL, I heard this, and I think I agree, is possibly the ultimate meritocracy. You don't get to stay on the field if you're not producing, period. And that has been that has stood the test of time forever in the NFL. If Patrick Mahomes goes out this season and looks like shit, like he may get a year, but it's not going to be a long time before they start thinking about where they're going to go next. And so something tells me that there is something football related that was making these teams hesitant because draft capital is worth something. And if you make the wrong move in the first round, you could potentially be set back for years. And so why would you take a flyer on a guy that you don't feel good about football wise in the first round when you could potentially get him later? If he works out, awesome, right? If he ends up being the franchise quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, great. They got him for a steal. But I do think that it's both. I think that it's football and that it's the extracurriculars. And if the reports about the Dayball thing are true, which the Giants are a fucking shit show anyway, so like how can you take them seriously? But if that's true, then that does translate. Brad, in our regular jobs, if we have a terrible interview like that and we go to interview somewhere else, those people talk. They're going to
Yeah.
hear about it. I think that's what happened here. And there's all these things about collusion, all this other stuff. Come on. Like that just seems, I don't know. It seems ridiculous that 32 teams would say, let's teach this kid a lesson. Let's teach his dad a lesson.
No.
Like it's not,
No.
it doesn't feel realistic to me.
No, you said it, man. The NFL is the ultimate meritocracy. Like all the NFL cares about, the franchise winning, right? And they don't care who your dad is. They don't care what color your skin is. They don't care what your I mean, really, like they don't care if you beat your wife. Like the NFL
Oh,
does not care. Like
good point.
they just want to win. Like that is like the bottom line. And I guarantee you, if someone thought that Shadeur Sanders was the path to success for them in
They'd
the
have taken
immediate
him.
future, they would have
They'd have
drafted
taken
him.
him.
All things considered, they would have taken him without batting an eye, 100%. Now, this might parlay into conversation later, but um, do you think that the NIL structure that exists right now in college athletics like gives these pro franchises a little bit of a glimpse into like the true character of some of these guys, or like sort of like what money may do to them or whatever? Because like you're getting that like on in some cases a comparable scale, but at least like I mean, look at the Nico thing or whatever you want to say, but like I think you're getting a little bit of a glimpse into maybe like the priorities of some of these folks because of the NIL system currently in college athletics.
I think for certain players you can. I'm not sure that that necessarily applies here because I think again his dad, the bravado that comes along with that, like it's kind of a familial thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, by the way, because I think that you should be confident, you should be brash, but at the same time, this is a professional league now. So if you're going to go in there and interview and carry yourself the right way, but also maybe think about like if you start to, rub these people the wrong way, that could hurt your chances, you know what I'm saying? But I
Yeah.
just feel like the NIL stuff for some kids, for sure. I mean, you may see it too, like with some of these kids getting paid more and more. It is kind of a glimpse into, well, what happens if we pay that person? But also, I think that NIL, which I think fundamentally is a good thing, but I've discussed on Braves Talk that it needs work. I think that you kind of see, like, you have these kids coming in with a chip on their shoulder. And not because they didn't get drafted where they wanted to, but they were like, hey, wait a minute. I was the guy back here. And this, our buddy Cleves likes to say, everybody's all American here. So that's off the table, right? Shadeur Sanders may have a ton of talent. He may end up being great. There's nothing that indicates that that isn't necessarily going to be the case. But just because you were or had your number retired at Colorado doesn't mean shit, even in Cleveland.
Right. Hey, I don't know the answer to this. I want to ask,
Ooh,
and I'm gonna react live.
yes.
Did they retire Travis Hunter's number also?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So say if they did not, which is still crazy, but like if they just retired Shadeur's number, but not Travis Hunter's number, then that would have been the most insane thing I've ever heard. Um, the guy that wins the Heisman Trophy, two-way player. I mean, Travis Hunter was by far the best player on that team. Obviously, he was considered by most the best player in the country.
So I like this take right here, and Joseph, thank you for the comment. But from a fan's perspective, who cares, right? Who cares how you got him? You have him. You're excited about him. That's kind of what the draft is all about. It's about hope, and you should feel good as long as your team is doing the right thing. So we appreciate the comment. And from a fan's perspective, it doesn't matter. We're looking at it obviously from the way that the media is portraying this, the way it's being talked about. I mean, some of the things that I've heard are just what I
Yeah.
like the collusion. Like the collusion part to me is like, all right, that's it's possible for sure, it's possible, but also seems like a huge risk to take. And then like, how do you decide who then ultimately takes him? Is it like nobody touches him until the fifth round, and then it's a free for all after that? That seems that there doesn't seem to be enough guardrails to like make that actually happen. With Kaepernick, you could say like nobody signed him. Okay, nobody signs him. But
Sure.
here it's like how would you even manage to do that?
And you know what though? I did see this kind of take on the situation, and that was that this isn't a bad thing necessarily for Shadeur, because now he's
No.
coming in here without that big price tag, without the pressure. Like he only has, he can only go up from where he's at, right?
Yes.
And yes, there's still the public expectations, but like he's not. No one's gonna say you're being paid X amount of dollars and you're not performing at that level, because he's not going to get paid that big, big price tag being drafted in the fifth round or whatever it was. And Joseph, yeah, thank you for your comment, because I'm not a Browns hater by any stretch of the imagination. I love the underdog. I would love for the Browns to be good. I would be on the Browns bandwagon just like I jumped on the Detroit Lions bandwagon, man. If they're able to get it going in a heartbeat, I would be. And I just love. I mean, I'm a Cubs fan. Sadly, I've been a really terrible Cubs fan since they won the World Series back in 16. But like, because it's like, hey, like we've reached the top of the mountain. I'm good. But no, I love the underdog story. I'm pumped for the Lions and what they're doing. And if the Browns can get that going too, I'd be so happy to see that. And I'd be right there with them, man. If you never watched before, we talk all the time about the AFC North and the Rust Belt and all that stuff and grit and toughness. And we're big fans of that here. Cleveland's a fine city, and they're good, hardworking people, and they deserve a winner. And I hope Shadeur can be the guy that brings that to Cleveland for the fans, because they certainly deserve it.
If at the end of the day, Shadeur Sanders is as advertised, then it doesn't matter, right? This whole story really doesn't matter in the end when the results are in. But as it relates to what's happening now, it is juicy, and it will be interesting to see how this goes on, especially with his dad still at Colorado. If he doesn't get enough playing, like how's that going to work? That's all something that we're going to monitor here, certainly as the season goes on. But you mentioned NIL earlier, and that's another big topic that we want to talk about. And the reason we wanted to is because I think it has had a huge effect on college sports, and I think we're seeing it more and more as it goes along. Now, I said earlier that I feel like NIL at its core is a good thing, but I do feel that maybe we need to figure out some guardrails for how this works. And I think a good example of that was, and I will not even try to pronounce his last name, but former starting quarterback at Tennessee. Do you know how to pronounce Nico's last name, or are we just going to leave it at
No,
Nico?
let's leave
Okay,
it,
great.
Nico.
So, from what I understand, he and his dad, his camp, wanted more money after Tennessee had a good season. They made the college football playoff. They got blown out against Ohio State, but hey, you make the playoff, you have a good season, especially with a freshman quarterback. And he wanted more. And Tennessee
Well,
basically
rumors
was
are he wanted more before the playoff game.
sure. But the idea is it doesn't matter. He wanted more, right? And it came to a head as the spring game, which is something that's now going away because of NIL, something else that we're losing here. And he didn't show up to what? It was the spring game or some mandatory practice or something. And basically they were like, all right, we're going to move on. He bet on himself. And there's a lot of rumors about what he asked for, what he didn't ask for. It's not really the point. He's now, I think he transferred to UCLA, and
Yeah.
I believe is getting significantly less than,
Like 900,000.
yeah, he wanted 4 million apparently.
He was getting 2-ish at Tennessee
Sure.
currently.
Yeah. And this is something that's going to happen again. And it's going to happen more often as long as we stick to this route for NIL. And I just feel like that is a dangerous road. And it sucks because, again, I think that the idea of paying players for name, image, likeness, and also paying them for what they're providing to the university on the field, the risk that they're taking, all of those things are good. But I don't know where we go from here. And to further that, we saw it even further in the NCAA tournament, which we'll get to in a minute. But I wanted to talk about the football part of it. And also, by the way, Ohio State spent $20 million on a team, won the national championship after we fired Ryan Day, not once, but twice.
But twice, yes. So, yeah, the Nico situation was interesting. I think a lot of people hope that it's a cautionary tale. That would be the ideal situation for, I think, um, college athletics, but it probably won't be. And like you said, this will probably happen again. Uh, I think one thing that shouldn't go unsaid is that speculation is that Dan Lanning is kind of the one that blew the whistle on this
He
thing
really did.
because
Ooh.
they were, Nico's camp was reaching out to different schools, Oregon being one of them, and he kind of turned Josh Heupel on to what was going on, and they were like, they kind of were like, well, we're going to fire you before you can quit us, type of thing. And
Before you
kudos to
continue, how do you
yeah,
feel about that? Do you like that? Or do you
I
think
do
that
because I think it's the coaches taking control of the situation a little bit because like yes, you're going to have your people out there who are going to like quote unquote like sell their soul to like win, but I don't think the coaches want this to become the norm where you have guys opting out, where you're constantly you're having players come to you before playoff games or bowl games saying, "Hey, if you want me to keep playing, you have to, write a check." And so I think that the coaches want to put a stop to this or slow this stuff down as much as possible. So I think that's where it comes from. I don't have a problem with that. Personally, I don't at all because that's what happens. Hey, you want to play the big boy game and getting paid big boy money. This is what happens. Not unlike, you talk about the speculation of collusion or whatever in the NFL. It happens there. Excuse me. It happens there. Why not happen in uh, NCAA athletics, especially when we're talking about the amounts of money that are being thrown around to some of these guys?
lots of money being thrown around to these guys? But anyway, I interrupted your other point, but I just was curious because you talked about Dan Lanning, and I thought I wonder what you think about that because that part of it I thought was really fascinating. He's like, oh yeah, thanks for the interest, and he immediately picks up the phone and is like, hey, Josh.
Yeah, well, it happens in the real world all the time.
I know,
Like
I
we've
know.
at the place that I work at, man. Like I've had people be like, "Hey, so and so just applied for a position," and I've like found out, through back channels that somebody applied elsewhere. I mean, it happens in the real world all the time. So no, I don't have any issues with it at all. As far as NIL goes, what do we do to fix it? It's really weird because, like, to me, it's bizarre. that the federal government is like meddling in it to some degree. Maybe probably the only way to avoid that is to just go with making them, W-2 employees, which I know so many people are hesitant to do. And yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that comes along with that when you go down that road. Um, but there's at least there's guidelines at that point and guardrails in place once you go there. But right now there aren't any, and they're just making them up as we go. If I could just make up my own imaginary rules for how the transfer portal and NIL should work, I think that you need to set a salary cap. I think that you give every kid one free transfer, and after that, you have to sit out a year, like the old rule. I think you put buyouts in place so that, like, especially these mid-major programs, you have a great player that gets poached away. You're at least going to get compensated for losing them. Um, and that does put a little added financial burden on the team recruiting that individual on top of, because how many times we hear about a coach, oh, we don't think such and such coach will get hired away because his buyout's too big.
Yep.
So maybe if, you have a kid that, this kid's going to be a stud, you put a competitive buyout in place and maybe you retain that kid just because the buyout's too big. And people just aren't willing to pay the price.
You make a good point about the lower levels. So Tennessee loses their guy, theoretically speaking, in the SEC, a lot more resources, a program that's recognizable. Chances are they're probably going to be able to recruit a guy at least at the same caliber, if not right around there, and be relevant, stay in the playoff hunt. Now, it's not a guarantee, but we're not talking about he left a school like Miami, Ohio, or something like that, which would leave them high and dry. And this NIL effect, I think, is starting to have a trickle-down effect where it's affecting the mid-majors more. And the idea of compensation is interesting because it's such a huge loss for, let's say, a Bradley or even anybody else that's at that mid-major level or even lower Power 5 level. When they lose a guy, it's a huge loss trying to fill that gap with something that's the same. And then you see a lot of these guys move on. In the NCAA tournament this year, I noticed it a couple years ago, but this year even so, almost every team that made the Final Four, I feel like half of their roster was transferred from somewhere else.
Well, there was a graphic. Did I send it to you?
No.
There was a graphic from like the Sweet 16 that somebody put out, and it just showed like a vertical, like 5 logos of the starting 5 for each of the Sweet 16 teams. And like BYU had like 4 of their 5 were because it was the place that those kids played at last season. BYU had like 4 of the 5 were there. Duke might have had like 2 or 3, but like nobody else had more than one that played on their roster last season that was currently in their starting 5 this season out of the Sweet 16. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen because, I mean, if there was not like, there's the most clear indicator that this is just like 1 year at a time that I've ever seen.
But the part that we lose out on as fans is recognizability. When you have a guy who stays at a school, and let's say that in the NCAA tournament, their team is good, and let's say Bradley has a 3-year run where they make the tournament. Well, those freshmen turn into juniors, and it's like, all right, they had a great run as a freshman. They lost. They came really close. Next year, you want to see that. Every single year, even at the highest level, these guys turn over so much. And some of it is because these freshmen come in. Cooper Flagg's a great example. I mean, he's going to get drafted, right? Really good, high ceiling. You're not going to expect to see him. But at the mid-major level, you used to have these guys stick around for a while. And there isn't even a recognizability for most of these programs at that level because their best players are going somewhere else. I mean, Bradley was able to keep a core together, and you've said it, right? Duke Dean was an excellent player, but if he's 3 or 4 inches taller, he's not playing at Bradley. And that's a fact, right? That is a genuine fact that it's like these guys wouldn't stay there if somebody else was coming calling for them. And so Bradley even was lucky to have the same relative roster 2 years straight, but it's not a guarantee that would even happen again, right? Now that they've had all these guys move on, and that recognizability takes away from the enjoyment to me of the NCAA tournament, because when I look at these guys in these teams, I'm like, man, I don't know who any of these people are. And these guys go to the NBA and they still even get lost in a bigger sea of professional players. And maybe that's part of why NIL is hurting the tournament specifically, because these teams that you would normally see on a 2, 3 year run, you don't get to see them again. It's one and done. And if that's it, we forget all about them.
And I mean, this is a poor example because it's North Carolina, and who would like what stud at North Carolina would transfer away from North Carolina? But
Yeah.
like it would, this almost is like robs away the ability to hate a Tyler Hansborough for 3 years. You know what I mean?
That's
Because
or
they're not
JJ
there all the
Redick.
time. Yeah, or
JJ
JJ
Redick.
Redick or whatever. Because it's like they'll jump. And now, granted, those are two poor examples because those
Yeah,
guys,
they
you're
are.
not leaving those programs.
But the
But
example still fits for
yeah,
anybody
or
else.
even just within a conference, like even within a conference like Bradley in the Valley, like there's there have been players who who play on rosters and you just like well, gosh, I can think of a couple, man, like with Connor Enright for Drake just a couple years ago, just a pesky little defender that just you'd love him if he was on your team, you hate him if he's not on your team. And he transferred to when DeVries left last year, he transferred to DePaul. And now that DeVries went to Indiana, he's now transferring to Indiana, and it's like if he was still at Drake, like I guarantee you he'd be the most hated player in the valley. And it's just like you lose those things, man. And just the same way you lose it on the positive side with the greats. You're gonna be so hard pressed now to have like true like all-time great players at some of these mid-major programs because they're not going to stay long enough to do that. Like in Bradley's case, the Duke Deans and the Darius Hannahs, unfortunately, are probably going to become the exception and not the rule as we continue down this road, unless something changes.
Yeah, and I know for me, I feel like a boomer feeling like we're losing out in this way because there are parts of everything that's happening that I do like. I mean, in college football, I like the 12-team playoff, but I think that it's going to come to a place where it becomes so top heavy and it may take away the enjoyment. I mean, I'm not saying that the NCAA tournament wasn't enjoyable. I mean, Florida is an excellent team, great run, had to make a lot of comebacks. There were some great games, especially the Final Four, Houston over Duke, like the way Duke blew that game. It's not as if the enjoyment is gone,
There's
but
no Cinderellas at all this year.
and the thing about the Cinderellas is you and I both have agreed that they're great up until a point, but you do like to see the recognizable teams make it to the Final Four. But like all chalk when there's no real drama, I don't know. I don't know if I want to see that year after year after year because part of what makes the tournament exciting and what we thought was going to make the college football playoff exciting is what if? And we're losing the what if with NIL if nothing changes. And I don't know, like, is that good for the sport, bad for the sport? Are we boomers? Are we old? Like, what is it? I don't know.
That's a good question, and it's probably not one for us to answer, I guess.
Oh, we're totally unqualified to answer that.
You'd have to ask. We'd have to get some 20-something-year-old in here to answer that question. I think.
Yeah, where's your dad?
That's a diehard sports fan, and see what they think. Maybe they think it's great. And I guess ultimately that's probably the group of people you should be placating to because their potential fandom is greater than us and the folks older than us.
That's a great question. What do you think young sports fans care about? Like you and I grew up straddling an era where loyalty mattered, but we can also get down with the new age changes that are coming, right? Like when it comes to baseball, pitch clock, we're all about it. That's something that older people, like my dad, was like, what is this pitch clock? And we saw a lot of hate when we talked about it. But think about like 16-year-olds, 18-year-old. Like, what do they care about in sports? Because they've grown up in a time where players normally don't stay. I mean, there's obviously exceptions, but like where you don't see that kind of these guys stay with these clubs for so long or even their whole career. Or you watch college basketball. Like I remember watching Providence College back in the day. They'd have those guys from freshman all the way to senior year. And a lot of times those teams would be good when they were all seniors. You don't see that today. Like if you're a young Duke fan, Cooper Flagg's gone. Why would you even invest in him?
I think that if I had to speculate what a young fan would be interested in, they live in a world where they can where change is sort of instantaneous, where their patience is very short, and not to any fault of their own. It's just the world they live in, right? Where almost everything they want is at their in the palm of their hand, right, at an instant. And so when it comes to sports, if your team is bad, and this is not necessarily applicable across the board, but if your team is bad, at least you have the possibility of making a couple moves, and the next year they could go from being the worst to the best, right? I mean, it's just like you could have positive change instantly with the transfer portal in college athletics, and just the same though as you could go. I mean, it could go south really fast too because you could lose your best players. But I don't know if if the younger generation is more programmed to this, just I don't know, things turning over more, this instant change, instant improvement. Um, Again, just total speculation. I'm totally out of my depth here, being
No, but
on the cusp of 40. But
I think you brought on a good point about fingertips and everything being right there. And I've spoken with people in the sneaker world when, as it relates to Michael Jordan and the idea of Air Jordans. Part of the reason why somebody like me can appreciate the Air Jordan line is because we watched it live. I watched Michael Jordan eviscerate the Utah Jazz, right? We saw him do this. It was appointment television. Sports now, in some ways, is, but mostly isn't appointment television anymore. Because if you missed it, it'll be on YouTube. The highlights will be there. You can catch what everybody's talking about like that.
it's a great point.
And it takes away from the I've got to watch this now, because I don't know if you remember, but like in high school or even younger, a big game, people were talking about it. You're like jazzed up for the game. And it was like, I can't miss this because tomorrow I now have to talk about this with other people who are going to have watched this. Whereas you and I sometimes with games, it's like, oh, I forgot to watch the game. Let me go ahead and on demand run it back. And it's not the same.
It's dude, the internet, things like YouTube, best and worst thing that's happened to us. On one hand, it's so great and informative to have that information at your fingertips, but like as someone who like when we plan a family vacation or whatever, like I value my time off and like my money that I have to spend towards these things so much that
Mm-hmm.
like I have like this I just have this deep fear of like spending time and money on a vacation and like not doing it the right way, that like I will research and investigate meticulously to make sure that like this what we do is doesn't turn out to be a waste, a waste of time or money or whatever the case. And but it's like at the same time, it's like by the time we've gotten there, even if it's like Disney World, by the time we've gotten there, I've seen every ride POV, right? I've done all this already virtually, basically, right? And it's like and it's like it takes away. I mean, I still enjoy it, but it's like it takes away from it a little bit, right? I mean, you can ride every roller coaster in the world on YouTube. Just dial it up, man. Like, and it's I think that it takes away some of that. I mean, yeah, there's a big difference between watching it and doing it, but having access to all those things, it takes away from being there. There is just like there's nothing that could replicate being in like a live concert. You could listen to the CD, you could listen to it on the radio or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
watch a YouTube video of a live concert even. There's nothing that matches being there. Like I think like sticking out in my mind, like I've watched like Queen at Live Aid like several times, but I
It's like
guarantee you like being there, different level, right? I mean, and there's a lot of other artists and stuff that would be in the same realm, but like same with like I've watched the video of Kirk Gibson's home run,
you weren't there.
right? But I wasn't there, and I
Or you didn't even
guarantee you
watch it live. Like that's actually
no,
something I
right.
was thinking is sports. The great thing about sports, why people don't like pro wrestling is because they feel as if the outcome is predetermined, which it is, but so
Sure.
they feel like I know or I can predict what's going to happen. When you go into a sporting event, the best sporting events ever are the ones where you feel like you know what's going to happen and the opposite happens, which is why the NCAA tournament traffics in that so well because, oh, a 15 seed has no chance to beat a 2. And then it happens. And it's joy. It's pure bliss. And that's one thing that sports provides where there's so few opportunities where you feel like you need to watch this because it'll be available again right after the game. And there's something different about watching it when you know what's going to happen. when you know the outcome already. What makes sports so great, and I don't know if people at a certain age care about this anymore because, again, it's available. And that's part of it, I think, when it comes down to why things like NIL and all that really probably don't resonate as much with younger people, because at the end of the day, they're just going to latch themselves to whatever the next thing is that they can, consume instantly.
Yeah. And I think that what you're saying plays into why I am like a very casual NFL fan is because there's no result that could happen in the NFL that's going to surprise me. Right? The talent gap in the NFL is so small between the best team and the worst team that like any team legitimately conceivably like can beat any team on any given day. Like not like one of those like anybody, but like realistically, like
Oh,
really like
sure.
and like look at the betting lines. That's all you have to do is look at the betting lines
100%.
and you can see like Vegas even knows that like the team that's supposed to be the worst team in the league still has a chance, a decent chance if they show up with a good game plan. And so I think that's what makes me as a fan struggle with it because like I feel like I'm not going to see anything. Like I love seeing the unpredictable. And I feel like the NFL is yes, you can watch it and you could really admire greatness like Patrick Mahomes. Like we talked about that a lot last year. Like as much as people get tired of seeing the same team winning all the time, which I think is one thing that's so funny we do as I think Americans is like we love we were so excited for the Patriots to like win the Super Bowl, and after they won a couple, I was like, okay, like go away, time for somebody else. And now like
Exactly.
The Chiefs are that right now. And we're excited to anoint you, but then we are excited to knock you off the top of the mountain
100%.
just as quickly. And um, but so there you could admire greatness, which I think we should do. But I need like I just need the unfiltered, unpredictable, real life drama, like in my face. Like you said, the NCAA tournament has been something that's been able to provide that until this year, really. Um, and I just hope we don't lose that in sports and becoming really top heavy, like you mentioned, is something that really, like Notre Dame. My fear is that if once Notre Dame finally gets over the hump and wins national championship, then my interest is going to fade because it's like, well, got the national title. What's there to like be excited about now?
Well, the chase is always more exciting than the actual event itself. But if
I did
there
the
is
same
this,
Colts, like truthfully.
I know if there is a sport that perhaps is easiest to stay where it's at and still provide excitement, it is professional golf. If professional golf is your thing, you watch the Masters, you never know what's going to happen. And so, to that, if you can stomach golf, which I love, but I'm saying there is a sport out there that maybe the money won't necessarily tip it to where you know what's going to happen every single time. That could be your thing.
Yes.
We could probably talk about these existential, philosophical talks all the time, but we've already bumped up to an hour here, and so we wanted to come back, shake a little bit of that rust off. It's been a little bit. We've been talking Bradley Braves. We haven't talked general sports, but I think we covered it well today. And if you have any opinions, of course, you can drop it in the comments if you're watching this later. 703-718-6314 is the call line for the show. We still have it, by the way. And if you want to drop an opinion, informed or uninformed, that is your place to do so. But this will be available in audio as it always is. But my man, it's good to be back. Do you have anything else for everybody here, including your father?
No, great to be back. He speaking of my father, I admire his fandom. I'll say that because he has been so like whether it's in season, out of season, like he's so tuned into Bradley, the recruiting. He's so tuned into the Notre Dame recruiting, the spring ball, and now the portal closed Friday for college football. So it's been a matter of who's going to leave, who's going to stay. He followed the Notre Dame players that were drafted. He's all into it. I love that. I'm happy that he has the time and the ability to indulge in those things. That's really fun. And it's good because we get to have conversations about that stuff. I'm not always as into it as he is. I feel bad sometimes that I'm not, but when we do have the time to dive into those things on a deeper level, it's fun.
It is always fun to talk sports. It is always fun to talk sports with you, just talk with you in general. And it's always great to make fun of your dad. He is a good, good person to do that. Good co-host on Braves Talk. Well, everybody, we hope you enjoyed it tonight. Let us know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments. If you're listening after the fact, Apple, Spotify, rate, review, all that good stuff. Whatever you feel is appropriate for this show. Hopefully we'll be back a little bit more frequently as we try to navigate some of this t-ball, softball, soccer, all this other stuff. But you know what, man? If anybody can do it, it is us. Hope this finds everybody well and safe, and we will see you next time. This is Iceman and Coach.